Back. Are you ready? All right. Friends, let's call this meeting to order. It is the congregation meeting of First Presbyterian Church of Allentown, a call to order at 11:32 a.m. Let us begin with an opening prayer. Please join with me in the Spirit. Gracious and loving God, we gather in your presence grateful for the gift of this community and for the ways in which you have guided us through seasons of change and growth. You have been faithful to us through times of uncertainty, sustaining us with your wisdom and grace and love. As we come together in this meeting, we ask for your Spirit to be among us. Fill us with the peace that surpasses understanding, open our hearts and minds to one another, so that we may listen with grace, speak with humility, and discern with faithfulness. May all that we do in this time honor you and serve the mission to which you have called us. Bless this time together, O God. May our work be fruitful, our decisions be faithful, and our hearts be ever open to the movement of your Spirit. In Christ's holy name we pray. Amen. Very first, do we have a quorum? We do have a quorum, so we will begin our meeting. Good morning, everyone. As we begin our annual congregational meeting, I want to provide some important instructions to ensure that our time together is orderly and productive, decently in order, as we Presbyterians love it. So very first, to clarify who has voice and vote in this meeting. If you are a member of the church physically present here today, you have both voice and vote during this meeting. If you are a member of the church joining us via the live stream, you have voice but no vote. And if you are not a member of this church, you have neither voice nor vote during this meeting. Each agenda item on our list today has a time for discussion. If the item requires a vote, discussion will follow after the motion has been moved and seconded. During discussion, you may make comments or ask questions. To speak, please come forward to the microphone stand that you see before you. Introduce yourself by stating your full name and then begin. If you are unable to come forward, please ask a neighbor seated next to you to come forward to the microphone to notify the team, and then we will bring the microphone back to you in your seat. If you are joining us via the live stream and have a question or comment, please write your comments or questions in the chat, and one of our members who is monitoring the live stream will bring that question before the body. And of course, decently in order means that nobody will be speaking out of turn during this meeting. How we vote as a body means that voting will be done by voice today, unless the appointed clerk determines that a clear decision cannot be made based off of what is heard. So what this will look like is when a motion is put to a vote, I will ask those in favor to say aye, and you will respond if that is what you believe. I will then ask those who oppose to say no. You will then respond as if you will believe. And again, it will be the appointed clerk to decide whether a voice vote is certain enough to follow through. Each of you, as your documents that you have before you, should have a few documents. The very first is you should have a copy of the agenda for today's meeting. On the back of that is information about Realm and how to update your information in Realm, which we all hope that you would do. You should have officer information and bio forms that tells us about our incoming officers for this year. You should have a handout highlighting upcoming important events in the life of our church. And then the very last thing is each of you as a member should have a copy of the annual report. If you are missing anything, please raise your hand, and one of the ushers and greeters will bring to you whatever you are missing. But I see in the way back, hopefully the team in the narthex can hear me. She's going back there anyway. Thank you. Everyone else is good? As part of this annual meeting, I am filling in as the moderator for this 1 month between our interim lead pastor and our new incoming installed lead pastor, but I also recognize in the past 3 years, this body did not receive any materials in advance of the meeting. And it's not something I personally feel comfortable with as your moderator, which means that I encourage all of you to ask questions along the way to make sure that you each feel fully informed what is happening in the life of the church. Please ask your questions. This is an opportunity for the congregation to ask before the entire body what is happening. And again, I apologize that we were not given information in advance. Our hope is that in future years, this will be the practice. It's my preferred practice. But because a lot of you are gathering the information now, I encourage you to ask questions. So, the very first, to begin this meeting, we do have a few orders of business. The very first one, our clerk of session, Linda Wiseman, is not present here today, and therefore we need to appoint a clerk for this meeting. Cliff Yazetsky has offered to serve in this role, but I need a motion from this congregation to appoint Cliff as the clerk. I see a motion from Dot. Is there a second? Second from Bill. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Cliff, you are now appointed the clerk for this meeting. Thank you. For the past 14, another order of business, for the past 14 months, the Reverend Dr. Susan Gilbert Zanka has served as our Committee on Ministry COM liaison. She serves on behalf of the Presbytery. Today, she has been asked to be the one to present the pastor's terms of call. Since Susan is a member of Presbytery and not of this congregation, we need to grant her voice for this meeting. So is there a motion to grant Susan Gilbert Zanka voice during this meeting? Bob, I saw your hand as the motion. Lois, I'll take yours as a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. Susan, you now have voice in this meeting. And I believe that means we're on to our responsive reading of the Behavior Covenant, which will be behind me. The way that I would like to do this today is that we're actually going to read the Behavioral Covenant together. And I almost lost mine. This Behavior Covenant that is on the screen behind me was adopted by the session on April 26, 2023, and it is practices for our congregation, all of us, to observe. And so I would like for us to read this together, starting with the mission statement, and we will continue down the list until we get to that last sentence, seeking God's presence and guidance in all that we do. So friends, let us read the Behavior Covenant together. We are imperfect people striving to live God's love in the way of Jesus Christ. As disciples of Christ, we covenant to live God's love by speaking for ourselves directly with one another rather than about one another in good faith and assuming the best of intentions, accepting responsibility for expressing our hopes, needs, and concerns, speaking with respectful, kind, and loving words, tones, and actions, the truth, recognizing each person's story and respecting the reality of our differences of interpretation, opinion, and experience, being as transparent and as inclusive as possible in all aspects of our congregational life to maintain an environment of trust, striving to stay grounded in facts through direct conversation, in love, listening to each other respectfully and without interruption, welcoming new ideas and perspectives, seeking to understand rather than judge, as a community of faith, establishing constructive means of communication and procedures for sharing ideas, concerns, and grievances, offering regular opportunities to speak and be heard, supporting one another, including pastors and others in leadership positions, honoring and supporting the decisions made by the community, choosing the path of forgiveness personally and collectively, committing to holding one another accountable when we do not uphold these covenant behaviors, seeking God's presence and guidance through prayer in all that we do. Thank you, everyone. At this time, I'd like to call Susan Gilbert-Zanka forward, and I will actually appoint her now the moderator of this meeting as I excuse myself to the hallway. I might get myself some chili.
Okay. Ordinarily, this would be done by the Chair of Personnel, but there was some business that was referred back to the congregation from the Committee on Ministry, and so just for ease, Bob and I agreed that I would do it so that he wouldn't have to explain the reasoning of the Committee on Ministry, which, got it. But if there are questions, Bob is here to answer them. So the first thing that we want to look at, and Sean, I don't have the screens here, but I think that the first thing that we're looking at, we can go to the next, yeah, this is for all employees. This is a policy that the Personnel Committee brought and that the session has adopted. Am I correct about that, Bob? Session has adopted that. And so this is for information, because this is something that is not subject to congregational vote. And I think you can see it, but it has to do with family leave. Then the next screen, okay, we did family leave for all employees. The next screen is additional family leave for pastors. This was one of the things that COM brought back. What happened was on January 12th, y'all voted the terms of call for Reverend Stephanie Anthony. And they were fine, and I took them back to the Committee on Ministry, and it turned out that there were some things that were missing that I did not know about. And one of them was this item that is a requirement from the Book of Order, and it was just added in the last General Assembly. You can see, or the one before, it would have been the, yeah, it's been added recently. The bold face shows that that's a new piece that was voted in the, not last summer's General Assembly, but the 2022 General Assembly, and then ratified by the presbyteries and became part of the Book of Order. Because it's new, I wasn't really familiar with it, sorry. So it was something that has to be added to Stephanie's terms of call. So that is one thing that has to be added to Stephanie's terms of call. And that's also a part of Taylor's terms of call. So I think, yeah, the other, another thing that we had to add was sabbatical leave for pastors. It's something that we have to address. And what's up here is the language that is recommended by the PCUSA webpage. This congregation hasn't yet defined a policy, but this is what the PCUSA recommends. So if we can right now just vote on those two items, the family medical leave for pastors and the sabbatical leave for pastors. First, I should ask, is there any questions? Yes. I'm pointing at you because I'm not going to be good at names.
Nelson Ravenall.
Thank you, Nelson.
This question is about, we've had it for years. And you're saying we have to change it or what?
Apparently, every church has to address that in the terms of call, and we didn't address it in the terms of call for Stephanie. Which, because I didn't know about it, is, I guess, my fault. I will accept responsibility. I'm seeing somebody walk to the microphone, and I'm seeing somebody wave hands. So I'm going to call on the microphone person first, and then, Ron, are you able to get to the mic? I don't remember, you got knee problems. Okay, I think Ron Cleaver. And please forgive me, all of you, when I don't remember your name. I'm, as Taylor pointed out, I'm not a member of the congregation. I do worship here, but I stopped remembering names when I stopped being an active pastor. But I worked so hard at it then.
Looks like this is on. Is it on? I'm Ron Clever. I can't vote yes for any of this because I can't read a single word of it.
I couldn't hear that, so can somebody just tell me what was said? Oh, he can't read it. Okay, the additional family leave for pastors says 12 weeks family medical leave, same as employees, and it's a requirement of G-2.0804 from the Book of Order, which states there, the call shall include, and here's the new part, provision for a minimum of 12 weeks paid family medical leave and then this is what always was there, participation in the benefits plan, and it goes on to say of the PCUSA. So all terms of call have to have the benefits plan, which we already had addressed, and this new piece that I was unaware of. And then it says, as the pastor's terms of call are reviewed annually, this paid leave is also annual. Then the next piece, can we go to the next screen? The next screen says sabbatical leave for pastors. And this language, as I said, was language that Linda put up that's recommended by the PCUSA webpage, and it says, 3 months compensated sabbatical after each 6 years of service, 1 year employment by FPCA post-sabbatical, and that says using recommended sample policy on the PCUSA webpage. So is there a motion to adopt both the family medical leave for pastors and the sabbatical for pastors? Diane? And is there a second? Bill. Sorry, I'm calling people whose names I know so that the clerk might know who seconded. It's a big church, lots of names. Okay, so then moving on. Oh, no, we've got it moved. Okay, so all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay. Let the clerk record that there was 1 vote nay. Okay, then moving on to the lead pastor, this was the only piece that we'd left out, and this has to do with housing allowance. Now, you're probably familiar, if you've been around the Presbyterian Church for a while, that pastors are allowed to designate part of their salary as housing allowance. It's an IRS thing, and what the IRS requires is that that designation be authorized by the session or the congregation before the payments begin. So ordinarily, the session would vote on the housing allowance, say at its November or December meeting, so that before the payments for the next year begin. But of course, we didn't know what Stephanie wanted, and when she candidated here, she was still looking for an apartment and trying to figure out what is what. So she has since communicated with us that she would like $40,000 of her salary designated as housing allowance. This is not adding money to her. This is just designating for tax purposes that $40,000 of her salary is designated as housing allowance. So it makes no difference at all to the bottom line for FPCA, but it has to do with Stephanie's taxes and the IRS. So is there a motion to accept that? Aaron, and second, Pat, thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okie dokie, thank you very much. Now we go on to Taylor's terms of call. So what the Personnel Committee recommended and session agreed to was a 3% cost of living for his salary, which covers then what we call effective salary, which includes the salary, housing, and medical thing that you do here that I'm not entirely clear on. And so it raises his effective salary from $78,672 to $81,032. That will require a vote. For information purposes, I want to let you know that the session has voted to award a one-time bonus for this coming year of $5,000 in recognition of his service over the past 5 years when there hasn't been an installed head of staff, including an estimated pension payment so that it's a total outlay of $6,300. That is something that the session is empowered to vote because it's not terms of call, it's a one-year bonus. So we're just letting you know that that took place. The part that you will vote on is the terms of call. So it's, let's go to the next slide. which has all of the information. I don't know if you can read it. Can anybody raise their hands if you can't read it? Okay, I will read it to you. His salary is $49,109.37. This is this medical supplement that you all do here that I'm not fully understanding. It's $23.57 and 67 cents, and then he's designated part of his effective salary as housing allowance, and that designation is $29,565.12. So his total effective salary is $81,032.16. Then additionally, and you voted on some of these in Stephanie's terms of call. I think you probably voted on all of them in her terms of call. There's a FPCA offset. Many churches do this as, the IRS giveth and the IRS taketh away. And so the IRS allows ministers to claim part of our salary as a housing allowance, which is not taxed for federal purposes. At the same time, they mandate that we be considered self-employed, which you don't need my editorial on that. Normally for self-employed people, you get to determine your own hours, and I'm pretty sure if the pastors weren't showing up on Sunday morning, somebody might be upset, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, so the FPCA offset, what this church and many churches do is to provide half of what would have been the employer portion. And then that's $6,198.96. Then the Board of Pensions contribution is $21,068.36. I should point out at this point that the Board of Pensions changed the whole health insurance approach over the last year. It used to be that they charged on behalf of every minister 37%, and it covered all ministers, whether they were single, married, if they had children, whatever, and it covered their families as well. For this year, and probably henceforth, they've made a distinction in recognition of, we all know healthcare costs have risen and insurance, we are aware of that. So they've now changed it so that they charge, I believe, 26% for a single pastor because coverage is only required for that one person. And then they charge a different percentage for a married pastor, and then they have another pastor, like Stephanie, you have the option of insuring their spouse and or their children. This church has elected to insure Stephanie and her spouse and her children. But what I'm pointing this out for is because this Board of Pensions payment is lower this year for Taylor than it would have been in years prior. So this is a place where the church is saving money, probably about $10,000. Is also proposed $2,000. This is a reimbursable, as is the continuing education of $1,500, cell phone and professional expenses of $1,950. Those last three that I mentioned are reimbursables. That means that Taylor needs to provide documentation in order to receive those. And so they won't be taxable because it's reimbursable expenses. So the total of all those things below the effective salary line is $113,749.48. That's the number that you're going to be voting on. And then over on the right-hand side, just for information's sake, is that bonus I described to you earlier with the Board of Pensions payment that goes to it. And yes, I called the Board of Pensions to find out if we have to pay Board of Pensions dues on a bonus, and yes, you do. And so the total that he will receive in one form or another this year is $120,049.48. But the part you're voting on is the $113,749.48. Was that clear? More or less? Okay, so I've lost track now. Has anybody moved this? I don't think so. Okay, would somebody make a motion to move this? Is that Bob Martin moving that we approve this? Is somebody going to second it? And Bruce Gunn, and Treasurer Walker both seconded it, and several others. Okay. Any questions? Any discussion? Oh, yeah. Come to the mic, and even then I won't hear you. Oh, the mic's not, it's gone.
Thank you. My name is Mark Mangala. I've been at church here for a long time with my wife and my daughter, sitting over there, Neri, my son Kai, And I just want to talk about Taylor's salary, and I'm not an expert in salaries or anything else, but I really feel since we've been at this church, there's 1, 2, 3, I think 4 main pastors, and a lot of other pastors have come and gone in between. And we really love the church when we first started the church years ago. And honestly, if Taylor wasn't here this whole time, we might have left churches. And I think that, I know he's getting a cost of living adjustment and the bonus, it's a one-time thing. I feel really strongly that he should be getting a lot more of a salary than he is. He's really helped our family out, our kids, he's still in touch with them all the time. And I think that's something I really want to discuss or see how everyone else feels about that. I know he's always texting, calling. We help out on Sundays, my wife and I. He's always there for the kids. He's building up the programs again. And in today's world, as we know, unfortunately, a lot of people are leaving the church. And I think he's starting to get this church back where it was and getting more people here.
Thank you. I was part of conversations around this, so I'm going to speak to the Personnel Committee's process, and then if Bob thinks I haven't done a good enough job, you come right on up, okay? The Personnel Committee considered that and expressed in every meeting that I was present for their deep appreciation for Taylor. They looked at the salaries of other associate pastors in this presbytery, which was sort of a moot point because there's only one other associate pastor in the presbytery. They looked at the salaries of solo pastors in this presbytery, and Taylor actually is paid more than all but 2 of them, of solo pastors who have entire responsibility for running a church. And then they also looked at the salaries for associate pastors in Philadelphia Presbytery, where there are more associate pastors, and so there was a bigger pool to look at. And while there were some that are paid more than what is being offered to Taylor, those came from churches that either had substantially larger budgets, I mean really substantially larger budgets, or were pastors who had been, it's my understanding, serving for much longer. But his salary was right in there, kind of in the mix for associate pastors in the Philadelphia Presbytery.
And that helps. My question is, these other churches, how big were they? How large were they? How big was the building? I mean, that's a lot that goes into this job. And again, I just really think consistency is really important in a church. And I don't know if other churches have the same situations where we have different pastors, and that's really a lot of stress to put on somebody. So I really think that's really important. He showed not only, that he's able to be here and his stability, but also his loyalty to the church. So I really think it's really important for us to consider that further.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't speak to every single one of the churches, although I grew up in Philadelphia Presbytery. I know Swarthmore Presbyterian Church is slightly smaller, but their associate pastor has a longer tenure. The Wayne Presbyterian Church is, I believe, a similar size, maybe slightly bigger. I'm not quite sure of that. I know the Bryn Mawr Church, which was the outlier, is much bigger and huge budget. I mean, it is just an outlier. Bob? You're on.
This was a big challenge for us because we all know what Taylor does and how much he does above and beyond. So we went to Bryn Mawr, Doylestown, Morrisville, Newtown, Swarthmore, Thompson, and Wayne. And right now, with the numbers that you see behind me for Taylor, he's at or above 6 out of the 8, and he's only below Bryn Mawr and Doylestown, both of whom have much richer churches and much bigger endowments. And the other thing I'll tell you is Doylestown, cost of living is 60.1% higher than here. Bryn Mawr is even more than that. So it was a challenge. I mean, we'd like to pay him more too, but staying within budget and staying within a comparison of other churches in the Philadelphia Presbytery, not here. We were challenged as to come up with the number we did even.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. It's a tough challenge when you have to deal with it.
Okay. And we do too in personnel, believe me. So, thank you.
And hopes that there will be good discussions with Stephanie when she comes in about how it can be a job description that will work well in a healthful way for Taylor. My personal passion, perhaps, is self-care and wellness for pastors. I did my doctoral thesis on wellness for pastors and found an astonishing number of them don't take days off or vacations, which is, it's part of our obligation, actually. So I know that personnel has been encouraging Taylor to set limits and to be very mindful. It's a very hard thing for a pastor to do because we love our people. I know how much Taylor loves this church and loves you all. And it's hard to understand that pastors, in addition to sort of pastoral emergencies, we carry a lot of emotional load of our congregations. You know, when you come and say, you know, gosh, it's been such a week. The dishwasher broke and the dog is sick and I'm worried about my kid and this. It may not be a pastoral emergency, but it weighs on the heart of the pastor. And being a pastor, I think I can confidently say, is a stressful job. And so one of the things that I'm no longer going to be the liaison to this church. I'm moving into moderating COM, and one of the things that I'm going to be hoping to work with our churches throughout the presbytery is to make sure that pastors take care of themselves. So make sure that Taylor takes care of himself, you know, that he takes good vacations, that he, I should have said, Session also granted him an extra week of vacation this year. But it's really, really important that pastors take good care of themselves. And one of the things you promise when a pastor is installed is to take good care of your pastors. So I really appreciate you raising those issues. Yeah, Josh.
We talk about stewardship quite a bit, and we talk about our financial giving, but stewardship is more than just the finances, right? So the thank yous, the hugs, the emails, drop off coffee if you're in the area for Taylor, those kind of thank yous are a big help as well. So don't just think about financially. It's a big piece, obviously. It's why we're here, we work, we do our jobs, but those other little thank yous mean a lot as well.
And I'm going to say this a little baldly, but for God's sake, please pray for your pastors. Okay, more questions? More discussion? Okay, then I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of accepting Taylor's terms of call, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. No. Okay, let the clerk pro tem record that there was one no vote. 2 no votes. I'm sorry? Oh, 2 no votes. I missed one. This is what happens when you've got somebody with hearing aids in the... Okie dokie, I think that's it for my part. So now you'll go on. Thank you for letting me have voice and be present. And thank you for letting me be part of this congregation, because I've grown to love you all.
Y'all made me a little nervous. Oh, thank you, everyone. I will say though, I was out in the hallway and I was in the library, and I got called into a meeting. We Presbyterians are so good at what we do that even while this congregational meeting was happening, I got called into a meeting with some of our Chinburmese folks. So meetings abound. Anyway, moving along. We are now moving to our annual report highlights, and I've written some things, but also I encourage you to check out the annual report that you have before us. So I want to highlight some of the ways in which I believe that this congregation has lived out our mission statement, which again, I think our mission statement is quite powerful and describes our congregation quite well. We are imperfect people striving to live God's love in the way of Jesus Christ. So I think we all can agree that worship remains at the heart of our life together. Each Sunday, FPCA continues to worship in 4 services in a variety of languages, locations, style, but also we unite as one body for at least 4 times and worship together like we have done today. I will say that we've done that 3 times so far this year, so we're about to reach our quota. Faith formation continues to thrive across all ages. Our Sunday morning formation, our weekday Bible studies, and small groups have flourished over the last year. We have currently 16 youth in our confirmation program. Last summer, we had 75 children in our vacation Bible school returning full force for the first time. And then we had over 140 different individuals join both our Lent and Advent small groups. This year, we've been living out our call to serve our neighbors in new and powerful ways. We started our new year-long intergenerational mission initiative. Last year, it was Faithful Waters, which included all ages in worship, learning, and action, which also included our noisy bucket offerings that ended up building 2 wells in Malawi and expanded shower access here in Lehigh Valley. This year, we've turned our focus to faithful housing, addressing critical housing needs both locally and globally. But mission at FPC goes beyond these initiatives, as you all know. This year, we continue to support our partners both near and far through financial contributions, but also through hands-on service. Whether it's through our food drives, the meals that we prepare for Ripple or Daybreak, shoes for our Daybreak guests, knitted hats for every first grader in Allentown, the Par for the Cause golf fundraiser supporting the warming station, this congregation has showed up in mission all year long. Our deacons and our Stephen ministers have been steadfast in their care for our community. Our deacons have provided meals, prayer shawls, home communion, and hospitality bags for our visitors, while our Stephen ministers have offered one-on-one conversation and prayer and support for those in need. Behind the scenes, our building and grounds team has been hard at work stewarding our facilities. Major projects this year include repair to our boilers, replacing the church office roof, upgrading lighting in the parking lot and fellowship hall, and removing trees outside of our building that posed a threat. Some projects, such as replacing the elevator and repairing the memorial garden, have been delayed to this year, but have been scheduled. And then looking ahead to the future, we have our Strategic Building and Grounds Task Force, which has been exploring how our campus might be shared in ways that generate income for major repairs, ensuring that our campus is not a burden for us, but rather an asset in ministry. Our preschool is growing. A new class was added this year, and we had full enrollment of 78 kids. We are adding 2 new classrooms next year. So we have expanded our ability to nurture young children all year long through our preschool. And of course, we welcomed 37 new members this year, including 5 former members who reactivated their membership, and we baptized 10 children into the family of faith. That nice thing about those 37 new members, that doesn't include any confirmation students, as we now do confirmation every other year, which means that yes, we will have 16 new members in hopes at the end of this year, but those 37 did not include any confirmation numbers. We had a rich body that was welcoming to visitors. This is just a glimpse of the life that we've all shared. I know that I cannot lift up anything, and I apologize if I left something out that was meaningful to you. I promise you it does matter, because we really have been the body that we have been called to be. God has been powerfully moving through this congregation. And of course, in the last year, the pastor nominating committee was ready to nominate our next lead pastor, the Reverend Stephanie Anthony. After our congregational meeting at the beginning of this year, she was officially called and will begin her ministry with us next Sunday, and for that, I am overjoyed. Really. But I also think that we now stand on the end of one chapter. So although we are highlighting our year-long ministry together in 2024, I'd also like to highlight and give thanks to some people over the last 5 years that has now led us to this point. So for the last 5 years, this congregation has walked in faith without an installed lead pastor. And yet, through it all, God has been at work, guiding, sustaining, and calling us forward. This has been a season for us, a season of perseverance, growth, and shared leadership, which has served as a testament to this body and the many individuals who have stepped up to serve. And I'd like to recognize some people today. The very first, I'd like to recognize our staff. The staff will over 30 individuals serving in both full-time and part-time positions. Through every transition, every challenge, and new opportunity, they have given their very best to this body, ensuring that the ministry of FPC has not only continued, but that it has been at its best. Their dedication has been a true embodiment of God's call to serve one another in love. Second, we give thanks for the pastors who have served among us during this time, each bringing their unique gifts to this congregation for a particular season and purpose. The Reverend Dr. Carter Lester, the Reverend Catherine Foster, the Reverend Dr. Jan Nolting Carter, and the Reverend Stephen Emick. Each of these pastors played a vital role in shepherding this congregation, providing wisdom, guidance, and care. We give thanks to Mufid Khoury and Abraham Bakawi, leaders of our Arabic and Chin Burmese worshiping communities. And we give thanks for honorably retired ministers who worship with this body, who has also stepped up to serve in times of transition. The Reverend Diane Karaha, the Reverend Gregor Palmer, and the Reverend Susan Gilbert Zanka. We give thanks for the work of the Lombard Peace Mennonite Center, an organization that Jan introduced to this congregation. Our work with Lombard, as we heard from the pastor nominating committee, was one of the things that set us apart for our pastoral candidates and ultimately helped bring Stephanie to us and us to Stephanie. In addition, we are grateful for the support of the presbytery through this journey. Our presbyters, the Reverend Rhonda Cruzy and the Reverend Denise Pass, as well as stated clerk, the Reverend Mike Drake, who you might recognize. They have been steadfast in their encouragement and guidance throughout this entire process. And we extend our heartfelt thanks to our 3 COM liaisons who have walked alongside us during this time. Ruling Elder Gary Perna, Ruling Elder Gail Watts, and the Reverend Dr. Susan Gilbert Zanka. Their dedication and wisdom has been a gift to this congregation every step of the way. We give thanks for the officers who have served this body over the last 5 years. Our elders, our deacons, the members of the nominating team, and the pastor nominating team for using their gifts to discern the will of God for this congregation. These individuals have carried the weight of leadership during times of transition, making difficult decisions, offering pastoral care, leading ministries, and keeping us grounded in our mission. Their faithful service has helped sustain and strengthen this church in remarkable ways. And last, but certainly not least, we give thanks for this congregation, for each and every one of you. Throughout this season of transition, you have remained faithful to God and to one another. You have continued to worship, serve, and bear witness to Christ's love in the world. You have supported and upheld your leaders, both staff and officers, ensuring that the mission of FPCA remains strong. So thank you to all of you. The last 5 years have been a testament to the resilience and faith of this community. And now, as we step into this new chapter, we do so with gratitude for what has been done and anticipation for what is to come. God has been faithful to us, and God will continue to lead us forward. So thank you, FPCA, for the love, commitment, and faith you have shown. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call Dot Ouellette forward, who will give us an end-of-year summary for our financials. And again, if you have any questions, we'll let Dot complete her report. If you have any questions, I'll invite you forward to come to the mic stand.
Before you start, Dot, can I just say that
Sorry, first make sure the sound's on, and then also introduce yourself first and last name.
Hi, I'm Lois Hensler, and I just want to make sure that you know about the discussion that happened here while you were out of the room and how grateful we are to you. You certainly deserve lots of thanks for the last 5 years, for your steadfastness, for your love for all of us, and for just everything, your prophetic voice, all that you've done for us in the last 5 years, and we would be remiss if you were not included in that list.
Okay, thanks.
If you go to the next slide, and I'll try to work it into your annual report. This coincides with page 18 on your annual report. This slide here shows the pledging for the last 4 years. And first of all, I'd like to recognize Bill White, who's stepping down as an elder, and Kevin Heyer, who's coming back for 3 more years. Thank you to the co-chairs of our stewardship committee. Without them, this would not have been made possible. As you can see, the fall campaign, which is labeled 2025, your pledges from the fall are being used in 2025's annual budget. Next slide. Okay, this shows the 2024 financial position for the church. The first off to the left is the balance sheet part. Is the asset part, and off to the right are the liabilities and the fund balance. Kind of self-explanatory. And then the next slide shows the 2024 and the 2023 receipts for the church. That 1.4 million, part of that is the pledging, and there's other giving, like other revenue, things like interest income, endowment revenue that gets added into it. So pledges is the largest component of our unrestricted budget. Next slide. And these are the expenditures. In 2024, we budgeted for a negative 58,000. We finished the year at a negative 12,000. So on the bright side of things, church staff tried real hard to keep expenses down, and pledging was a bit higher than we anticipated, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Thank you. Any questions?
Seeing none, thank you, Doc. At this time, I'd like to call forward Josh Louie, who will be sharing the budget for 2025.
Again, my name is Josh Louie. I'm the chair of the Finance Committee. I'd like to thank the others on the finance team for helping create the 2025 budget, led mostly by Tara Dreher, our staff accountant, also by Treasurer Dot Ouellette, and the rest of our team consists of Bob Martin, John Norris, Nelson Rabinold, and Rich Ferreira. As you can see from Dot's earlier slides, the pledges are up again compared to 2024. That's great news. Unfortunately, they're only up a little bit. Our costs continue to increase a little bit more than the pledges, unfortunately. The building and grounds team, as Taylor mentioned, has continued to make some investments in the building, like a new boiler and LED lighting upgrades that have already shown improvements in our utility costs. Let's hope that balances out the snow plowing budget that unfortunately we've seen this year that is already way over. So if you want to pull up the numbers here, they're also in your pamphlet. The numbers are a little bit off because we received a couple last-minute pledges than what's printed. But we as a session have approved a 3% raise for all staff as recommended from the presbytery. We also have a rather large increase from Pastor Carter to Pastor Stephanie due to her increased medical and retirement payments as required by PCUSA, as opposed to a retired pastor. She's an installed pastor, so a little bit higher medical and retirement payments for her. Last year, we made some cuts, most significantly in the hours of the third pastor from full-time to part-time. This year, we have chosen to move ahead with the same staffing level, and will work with Pastor Stephanie as she gets settled into her new role. The finance team has tried to predict other costs of the church and come up with the 2025 budget. We have been conservative the last few years, or maybe just blessed, and we have beaten our projections by about $40,000 to $50,000 each of the last few years. Last year, we predicted about a $59,000 deficit, and we ended up with only a $12,000 deficit. Unfortunately, this year, we're looking at closer to $80,000 deficit. If anyone still has not pledged for 2025, or if you have seen these numbers and feel called to increase your pledge, there are many ways to do so. Online through your Realm account,
Mail in a new pledge card to the office, or you can call Tara in the office. Any little bit helps, and it all adds up to allow us to be the church that Jesus has called us to be. As mentioned in the agenda, the budget is not something that gets approved by session. It doesn't get approved by the congregation, but I'll open it up to any questions you may have. All right, seeing none, I'll return it back to Taylor. Thank you.
So Josh is right, this congregation does not vote. Instead, what we will do is we will receive the 2024 annual budget, as well as vote to receive we will vote to receive the 2024 annual report and the 2025 budget that has been approved by session. This is coming from session, so it does not need a second, but now is time for discussion. Again, any questions or comments? All those in favor of receiving the 2024 annual report and the 2025 budget, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. All right, the motion passes. Next, I'd like to invite Bruce Gunn forward, chair of the nominating committee, as we elect our next slate of officers.
I'd first like to acknowledge the members of our current nominating team who have worked very hard throughout this past year to put together our slate of elders and deacons and nominating team nominees for today's election. The members of the nominating team are Bob Martin, Deb Palmer, Maureen Fleischman, Leslie Longenhor, Mary Jo Taylor, and Marilyn Leiby. Pastors Carter and Taylor served as our staff support. Before presenting our slate of nominees, the nominating team would like to express gratitude to those church officers and nominating team members who are completing their terms of service. Elders, Rick Ensley, Catherine Grum, youth, Bruce Gunn, Dot Olette, and Bill White. Deacons, Matt Clever and Gada Jano. Nominating team, Maureen Fleischman. Please join me in expressing our appreciation for their service. Now, the nominating team is pleased to present the following slate of nominees for the offices of elder, deacon, and nominating team. You should have received bios of the officer nominees as you came in. For elders for the class of 2028, Diane Edelman, first term. Dennis Giangiulio, first term. Sandy Gunn, first term. Kevin Heyer, second term. Spencer Jones, first term. Kathy Matthews, second term. Jeffrey Renali, first term. Elder for the class of 2027, this is a 2-year unexpired term, Jen Reedy, and it's in her second term. Elders positions normally filled by youth for the class of 2026. Kate Gilchrist, second term, and Neri McGalley, first term. And deacons for the class of 2028. Marian Detilio, first term. Jenny Lucas, second term. Carol Miller, first term. Kelsey Miller, second term. Gary Stone, first term. Suzanne Wirtz, second term. And finally, deacons, possessions normally filled by youth for the class of 2026. Carolyn Grum, second term. And Lexi Simmons, second term. And finally, nominating team for the class of 2028, Lois Hensler, first term. Mr. Moderator, I would move that this slate of nominees be placed in a nomination for the respective offices.
This nomination is coming from the nominating committee, which is a committee of this congregation. It does not need a second. Is there any nominations from the floor? Are there any discussion, questions, or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. All right, motion passes. We have a new slate of officers. Thank you, Bruce. We have no other business on our agenda for today, so is there a motion to adjourn? All right, Quick, on your hand is the motion. Rebecca Taylor, I'll take yours as a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. If you said nay, you're staying here all day. Friends, let us adjourn this meeting with a closing prayer as well as a grace before the meal we get to share together in the fellowship hall. Please join with me in the spirit. God of grace, God of abundance, as we close this meeting, we give you thanks for your presence among us, for the faithful work of this congregation, and for the love that binds us together as the body of Christ. In all that we have discussed, decided, and discerned, may we have been guided by your wisdom and led by your Spirit. We are grateful for the many hands and hearts that serve this church, for the leaders who have given their time and their gifts, and for the vision that you continue to place before us. As we step forward into the days ahead, may we do so with courage, faith, and an ever-deepening trust in you. And now, as we gather around the table for fellowship, we give thanks for the meal prepared for us by the faithful housing mission team, among so many others. Bless the hands that made it, the conversations that will be shared, and the mission that it supports. May this food nourish our bodies as your love nourishes our souls, that we may go out to serve you with joy. In Christ's name we pray, amen. Thank you, everyone.